Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. We're going to be looking at one of the most highly specialized, just completely intricately designed cells in all of human biology. Imagine a tiny vessel that has to navigate an incredibly treacherous environment, survive against literal all odds, and deliver a super-sensitive payload to an exact target, all while being totally self-contained. Yeah, we're talking about the human spermatozoan. For all intents and purposes, it's the ultimate biological submarine on a singular, defining mission.
Okay, let's dive right into our blueprint for today. We'll start by meeting the spermatozoan. Then we'll break down its three mechanical regions, the head, the midpiece, and the flagellum, before finally wrapping up with how this form is just perfectly built for its function.
So part 1, let's meet the human spermatozoan.
A spermatozoan, which you probably just know is a sperm cell, is a male reproductive cell, or gamete. But what makes it so incredibly fascinating is actually what it isn't. During its development, a process called spermiogenesis, this cell acts like the ultimate minimalist packer. It literally sheds virtually all of its excess cytoplasmic baggage. It gets rid of anything, and I mean anything, that doesn't directly contribute to its one solitary goal. And that goal? Becoming as streamlined and efficient as possible to deliver a haploid set of chromosomes, meaning exactly half the genetic material needed for a human, straight to an egg.
And honestly, the sheer scale of this brilliantly illustrates just how stripped down the sperm really is. When you compare the female gamete, the secondary oocyte or egg, to the sperm, their functional roles are just vastly different. The oocyte has to provide all the cellular organelles, the nourishment, and the genetic programming needed to support an embryo for nearly a week. Because of this, the egg is massive by comparison. Get this, the ratio of their volumes is a staggering 2,000 to 1. The sperm is essentially just a tiny, highly specialized delivery vehicle.
Now, the transformation process to get to that point is really something. A standard initial round cell progressively elongates and literally chucks out that excess cytoplasm we talked about. As it matures, it forms three distinct, highly specialized mechanical regions: the head up at the front, the midpiece right in the center, and the long tail trailing behind. Every single structure here has a highly specific job to do.
Moving right along to part 2, the head, the genetic payload.
So, you might be wondering, if this cell is literally just a tiny payload of DNA, how does it actually physically get inside an egg? I mean, the female egg doesn't exactly just leave the front door wide open, right? It's heavily protected by thick, formidable layers of cells and proteins, like the corona radiata and the zona pellucida. How on earth does a cell 2,000 times smaller breach those massive walls?
Well, the answer lies entirely in the structure of the head. First off, it contains a flattened nucleus, and that holds the highly compacted DNA, the payload itself. Then, at the very back of the head sits a centriole, which is actually going to be used to form the first mitotic spindle once it gets inside the egg. But the real key to breaching those heavy egg defenses, that sits right at the very front. It's a specialized helmet-like structure called an acrosome.
This acrosome forms a literal cap, or helmet, over the entire front half of the nucleus. You can really just think of this structure as a chemical drill bit. It is completely primed and ready to break through the egg's outer armor.
Because the crucial point here is that this acrosomal helmet isn't just some hard physical shell. No, it's actually packed full of powerful hydrolytic enzymes, most notably hyaluronidase and acrosin. When the sperm finally reaches the egg, it undergoes what's called the acrosomal reaction. It releases these enzymes to literally melt and digest a path right through the hyaluronic acid and glycoproteins protecting the egg. And here's a wild fact. In humans, it actually takes the combined enzymes of multiple sperm to clear a path through that outermost layer, even though only one single sperm will ultimately fuse with the egg.
All right, section 3, the midpiece, the engine.
Now, the number 1 here represents something super fascinating. See, most cells in the human body have many, sometimes literally thousands, of tiny powerhouses called mitochondria floating around inside them. But the human sperm cell is incredibly unique because it contains just one single, extremely large, spiral mitochondrion.
And the way it's built is just genius. This single mitochondrion literally spirals tightly around the central contractile filaments of the tail, positioned right at the base of the head. If you picture a tightly wound copper coil inside an electric motor, that's exactly what this looks like.
And honestly, an electric motor is a perfect analogy for it. This tightly coiled engine is perfectly positioned to generate and pump out massive amounts of ATP. which, as you might remember, is the biological currency for energy. Because it's wrapped directly around the top of the flagellum, it feeds this energy straight into the propulsion system. There's no wasted time, no wasted distance. It is just pure, localized power generation.
Which brings us to Section 4, the flagellum, the propeller. The flagellum, or tail, is this incredibly efficient propeller. It's produced by a centriole near the nucleus and extends all the way out the back of the cell. Using all that ATP generated by the mid-piece we just talked about, it uses these strong whip-like movements to drive the cell forward. And it is surprisingly fast. It propels the sperm at speeds of about 3-4 micrometers per second. To put that into perspective for you, that's about 5 inches per hour. Now, that might sound slow to us, but for a microscopic cell navigating the massive, complex environment of the female reproductive tract, that is an absolute sprint.
And finally, Section 5. Form perfectly built for function. So, pulling it all together, we see this absolutely brilliant display of form meeting function, where every single piece relies entirely on the others. The whip-like tail provides the thrust, pushing the spiral engine forward. The engine, in turn, burns the fuel to keep that tail whipping. And working together, they drive the streamlined head, that precious genetic payload, forward through a treacherous journey, all until that chemical helmet can breach the target and spark fertilization. There is literally no wasted space here.
It really leaves us to just marvel at this microscopic masterpiece, doesn't it? I mean, how does a tiny vessel carrying only the absolute barest essentials and stripped of all other life support systems manage to navigate an almost impossible journey to spark human life? It's just an incredible testament to the brutal efficiency and breathtaking elegance of biological engineering. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on. If this much complex mechanical perfection exists in just a single microscopic cell, what other incredible biological machines are quietly operating inside of you right now? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and we'll catch you in the next one.